Emma stood alone in her small Seattle apartment as evening light slipped through the window, turning the walls soft gold, and for a moment she just listened to the quiet, the kind of quiet she had grown used to since her breakup, a quiet that felt calm on the outside but heavy inside, because every sound reminded her of how much had changed, how nights used to be shared and now belonged only to her, and when her phone buzzed on the counter she almost ignored it out of habit, but something made her look, and there it was, a simple message from Lily inviting her to a casual night with friends, nothing loud, nothing wild, just people, music, food, laughter, the kind of night Emma once said yes to without thinking, but now every invitation felt like a small test she wasn't sure she could pass, and she walked to the window holding the phone, watching cars move slowly through the damp streets, remembering how the city used to feel full of promise before heartbreak taught her caution. Before trust felt like a risk instead of a gift, and she told herself she was fine staying in, that she had work to do, that rest was better, that being alone was easier, but the truth pressed gently against her chest, because easier did not mean happier, and her reflection in the glass looked tired in a way sleep could not fix, and she thought about Lily's kindness, about friends who had never stopped caring even when she pulled back, and about how loneliness often grew quietly when you kept choosing comfort over connection. And as she reread the message she noticed how it didn't demand anything from her, it didn't promise magic or change, it simply offered company, and that simple offer stirred something deep inside her, a small ache mixed with hope, and memories rushed in of nights filled with laughter, of feeling seen, of belonging without effort, and she realized she missed that more than she admitted, missed the feeling of being part of something, missed hearing her own laugh, missed the version of herself that didn't think twice before stepping out the door. And fear followed quickly, reminding her how opening up once had led to pain, how trusting the wrong person had taken years to undo, and she closed her eyes, breathing slowly, knowing this decision was bigger than it looked, because saying yes meant risking disappointment, meant stepping back into the world instead of hiding from it, meant allowing something new to happen without knowing the outcome, and for a long moment she did nothing, just stood there while the city moved on without her. Until she understood that staying home would not protect her heart forever, it would only keep it small, and that thought changed something. Because Emma didn't want to keep shrinking her life to avoid hurt, she wanted to feel alive again, even if it scared her, and with a steady breath she unlocked her phone, typed a short reply, and sent it before she could change her mind. And the moment the message left her screen her heart beat faster, not with panic but with energy, as if a door she thought was closed had quietly opened, and she leaned back against the counter, surprised by the smile on her face, realizing that this simple yes was not about one night. It was about choosing herself, choosing movement over stillness, choosing the chance of joy over the certainty of silence. And as the sky outside darkened and city lights began to glow, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense that tonight might matter, that even small choices could lead somewhere new, and though she didn't know what awaited her beyond her apartment door, she knew one thing clearly: she was tired of letting fear decide for her, and for the first time in a long while, she was ready to step back into the night. Emma stepped into Lily's apartment, and immediately the warmth of light, music, and chatter wrapped around her like a familiar hug, making the nerves in her stomach twist and settle at the same time, because it had been so long since she had felt this kind of welcome, since she had been part of a space where laughter and comfort existed naturally, not forced, and friends greeted her with smiles and quick hugs that reminded her of belonging, of people who knew her past but still chose to include her. And as she moved through the room, taking in the smell of food and the soft hum of conversation, her eyes landed on Daniel, someone she had met before but never really noticed, and something about him tonight made her heart skip a beat. Maybe it was the way he leaned slightly forward as he listened to Mark speak, or the quiet confidence that radiated from him without effort, or the calm in his gaze that seemed to see more than the surface. And when their eyes met, he smiled, not a showy smile, not one meant to charm, but a genuine, slow smile that felt like recognition, like a secret being shared silently across the room. And Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest that she hadn't expected, a mix of curiosity and a fluttering nervousness that reminded her how alive small connections could make a person feel. And before she knew it, she was sitting near him during the card game, and conversation flowed easily, light questions that revealed more than they asked, The kind of talk that didn't judge or probe too deep too fast but still left room for understanding, and she laughed at something he said, a quiet, soft laugh that surprised her because it came so naturally, and she noticed herself leaning in slightly when he spoke, noticing how he made even small stories feel important, as though he genuinely cared, and while the room was alive with chatter and movement, the moments between them held a different rhythm, one that felt private even in public, where each glance and smile seemed to linger, and Emma caught herself thinking about how it had been a long time since someone made her feel seen in that simple way, and she reminded herself not to read too much into it, that it was just a friendly evening, just a night with people she trusted. But even as she said the words in her mind, her heart refused to listen, and she felt excitement, a subtle thrill, that maybe something more could exist, or maybe it was just the feeling of being fully present and alive again, and she marveled at how quickly the room had shifted from familiar comfort to quiet anticipation, how easily laughter and connection could create sparks she hadn't felt in months, and she realized that tonight, even without planning it, might change something, might awaken feelings she thought were buried. And as the game continued and people joked around, she caught herself stealing glances at Daniel, noticing little details, the way his hands moved when he gestured, the slight crease of his smile, the way he listened before responding, and all of it felt new, intriguing, almost electric, and while she tried to stay casual, to not let her thoughts run too far ahead, she couldn't deny the thrill that came with every shared glance, every gentle smile, and she felt a soft, unexpected hope blooming inside her, a hope that connection could happen again, that nights like this could remind her she was capable of feeling, of enjoying, of letting someone into her quiet heart. And even as the music played and laughter filled the air, Emma sensed that this night, simple and unassuming as it was, might mark the beginning of something more, something delicate and emotional, something that made her wonder, with a gentle ache, what could happen if she allowed herself to feel fully again. As the night deepened and the music softened, Emma found herself stepping onto the balcony, needing air, needing a moment away from the laughter and chatter inside, the cool Seattle night brushing against her face, carrying the faint scent of rain and city lights, and for the first time that evening she allowed herself to breathe fully, to feel without distraction, and then Daniel appeared beside her, quiet and calm, as if he had followed the same impulse without needing to speak, and the silence between them was comfortable, not awkward, the kind that allowed thoughts and feelings to settle gently, and he spoke softly, telling her he was glad she had come tonight, and Emma admitted, almost shyly, that she had almost stayed home, that she had almost let fear decide for her, and he nodded, understanding, as if he knew exactly the weight of that choice, and in that shared quiet, Emma felt something shift, a realization that being seen and understood could be both simple and profound, and she noticed the way his eyes held patience and warmth, a quiet strength that invited trust, and as they both leaned on the balcony railing, watching the city stretch below them, Emma felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to soften, each word and glance from Daniel acting like small cracks letting in light, letting in possibility, and she reflected on how long it had been since someone had made her feel safe and noticed at the same time, someone whose presence did not demand anything from her yet offered a sense of connection that was both thrilling and gentle, and in the quiet of that moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it could be like to open up again, to trust slowly, to let small gestures and soft words grow into something more, and she felt a flutter of hope mixed with lingering fear, a bittersweet combination that made her heart ache in the most tender way, and she realized how much she had missed feeling alive in the company of another person, how much she had longed for someone who could make ordinary moments feel meaningful, and Daniel's calm presence beside her reinforced that it was okay to feel again, okay to take small steps, okay to let the night matter even without grand declarations or dramatic events. And when Lily called everyone back inside for a group photo, the spell of that balcony moment didn't break but lingered quietly, a promise of potential in the air, and Emma returned with him, side by side, carrying the warmth of that shared silence, aware that her heart had already shifted. Aware that something subtle yet powerful was beginning between them, something that would influence the rest of the evening, something that made her pulse quicken with anticipation and gentle longing. And she realized that nights like this weren't about rushing or forcing connections, they were about noticing the small details, the soft smiles, the patient listening, the simple courage to be present, and she understood, with a deep, quiet certainty, That this night was not just a fleeting moment but the start of a delicate, emotional journey that could lead to trust, closeness, and perhaps even love, all unfolding naturally, gently, and in a way that made her feel alive and hopeful again. The kind of hope that stays long after the laughter fades and the city lights blur into the memory of a perfect evening. The night was winding down, and Emma felt a bittersweet pull as friends began saying their goodbyes. Laughter softening into quiet conversations and lingering hugs, and as she stepped outside into the cool Seattle air, she found Daniel walking beside her, the city lights reflecting in his calm, thoughtful gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause, holding the promise of what could be, because nothing dramatic had happened. No grand gestures or confessions, just a night filled with warmth, connection, and the kind of easy companionship that reminded her heart how it felt to trust and enjoy another person's presence. And when Daniel spoke softly, asking if she might like to meet for coffee sometime, Emma felt a flicker of excitement mixed with fear, a recognition that saying yes again was both simple and brave, and without overthinking, she replied that she would, and immediately a wave of relief and joy washed over her, because she realized that tonight had been about more than him, more than flirting or attraction. It had been about her choosing to step back into life, to embrace possibility, to allow herself to feel, to laugh, to connect, to risk small disappointments for the chance of something meaningful. And as they parted with a gentle wave, Emma walked to her car with her chest light, her mind replaying every laugh, every glance, every quiet moment on the balcony, understanding that the magic of the night had not been in dramatic events but in small, emotional awakenings, in the soft realization that she was capable of joy and connection again, that loneliness could be softened by simple acts of courage, that showing up mattered more than she had allowed herself to believe. And driving home, she noticed the city's streets glowing under the streetlights, reflections dancing in puddles from an earlier rain, and in that beauty she found a quiet metaphor for herself, a heart once dampened by hurt now catching light again, fragile but alive. And when she reached her apartment and set her keys down, she smiled at the thought of the evening, the people, the conversations, the unexpected closeness with Daniel, and the choices she had made, and she understood that this night would linger in her memory not as a single event but as a turning point, the moment she said yes, the moment she allowed herself to feel, the night that reminded her that life, even after heartbreak, could be rich with connection, laughter, subtle romance, and hope, and that the smallest decisions, to go out, to be present, to open her heart a little, could create ripples that lasted far longer than the night itself, leaving her with a quiet warmth, a sense of possibility, and a gentle certainty that good things were still waiting for her, as long as she continued to say yes to life.